Welcome to another insightful episode of Me and My Health Up podcast. My name is Raul Haro, and I was previously an intern for Me and My Health Up, but now I'm taking the reins for today as host. And with us today, we have the man, the myth, the legend, Anthony Hartcher. So, Anthony, how you doing today? Happy New Year, my friend.
I'm awesome, Raul, and so great to be switching seats for once. And I really loved watching you flourish as a guest on the podcast, and so it's great to have you in the driver's seat, so to speak. So thanks for hosting.
Yeah, of course. For all the listeners out there, I was telling Anthony, I was like, man, Anthony has so much knowledge and insight as a dietitian and nutritionist. The people want to hear from you. So that's kind of what we're going to do today. We're going to do something a little different, more of like a Q&A, kind of have him debunk some myths of just some common questions that I have heard and that, I kind of looked up to see, and people that I went around asking to see what they think they could hear from a nutritionist, that not everyone has access to. So I think this is a good thing for us to do, Anthony.
Yeah, thanks again. I really appreciate it, and look forward to it. Actually, excited.
All right. So Anthony, I always hear that people talk about nutrition labels all the time. So true or false, are nutrition labels misleading?
So nutritional labels are definitely regulated in Australia. I'm not so quite sure about America and other parts of the world, but generally I'd say Europe has regulation on nutritional labels. What's probably less regulated is the marketing of the packaging. So the packaging will always have highlighted certain words such as gluten-free or sugar-free or fat-free, and just picking up on all the buzzwords of the moment so that people just get attracted to that buzzword. Oh, it's, low carb. Yeah, I'm going to buy it. So this is what can be a bit misleading. So I always suggest to my clients is, okay, pick up the packet. Yes, if it looks great on the front and you're attracted to it, then let's turn to the back and actually read the nutritional label. And because in Australia they have to list out certainly the the calorific content, the sugar, the fats, the protein, and sometimes they'll list out the vitamins and minerals if they've added it into the product. But yeah, certainly there's some basic labeling that has to be done within Australia. I just don't know the framework of the American system and the European system.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's pretty much similar, but no, that's good to know. Just pretty much just watch out for the eye-popping things, and, don't forget to look at the back of it also, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, because sometimes things can be really attractive, such as gluten-free, like everyone's at the moment thinking they need to be gluten-free. And you turn to the back and it's just full of rubbish. Like it's high sugar, it could be high fats, and it's generally got a whole lot of, and so not only important to read the nutritional content, but also to read the ingredients. And the ingredients listed at the start are the highest percentage in that product. So if it says sugar as number one, the majority of that product is sugar. So certainly you want sugar to be at the very end or I guess out of the equation totally. But you certainly want it to be at the end of the ingredients, not at the start.
That's good to know. Anthony. I heard you say gluten in there. So I've heard a lot of things about gluten-free. Is gluten-free the way to go?
Gluten, yeah, it's a very trendy, popular buzzword. So, look, I certainly gluten-free, the way to go, it's very much on the individual. So some individuals actually have some intolerance, or they actually can't have it because they're celiac, or they have some condition, some inflammatory bowel condition, IBD, IBS, or Crohn's disease, or celiac. So that gluten, which is a protein, it can be a bit inflammatory for someone who has sensitive intestines, but not all of us do, and some of us can eat it without any problem. So if gluten, doesn't react to you, or doesn't give you any adverse feelings, and it's fine. If obviously you're experiencing some of these digestive issues, such as if you feel lethargic after eating it, if you feel bloated after eating it, if you have a fair bit of gluten and you're constipated or something, or you have diarrhea, then these you sort of start questioning it. But you can get tests done to find out for sure. But I wouldn't say it's a blanket no. It's just tread with caution.
Got it. And another thing, so when going to the grocery store, when you see the produce and you see an organic section and you see the regular section, is it always better to go to the organic section?
Yeah, so this is, again, different states, jurisdictions, countries have different regulations around what is certified an organic label. And so it does depend on where you're living and what sort of regulation it falls under. But generally speaking, organic's a lot cleaner than conventional. It's generally a lot less pesticides involved, or it's nil of pesticides. I'd say it's cleaner, certainly cleaner, and it's probably more expensive because there's probably less areas that can be farmed that's considered organic areas. So supply is on the low side and the demand's creeping up. So you have this, supply-demand equation equating into a sort of a higher price point. But, if the consumers go organic and then the farmers start converting over and start producing more organic produce, then the price will come down as the supply goes up. So I certainly recommend the Dirty Dozen. So the Dirty Dozen, which you can Google, Dirty Dozen, Clean 15. It comes up, you'll see what the Dirty Dozen is. So Dirty Dozens is foods that are, natural produce that is highly sprayed to keep the bugs and pesticides away. And that's typically like your berries, your stone fruit and things like that. And certainly the fruits that don't have a cover. Whereas the Clean 15 are generally like your banana, your avocado, a bit more resistance and they obviously got a shell on the outside. So there's less, even if it is sprayed, there's less chemical getting inside to the fruit that you're actually eating. I know apples is heavily sprayed, and then your leafy greens are quite heavily sprayed. They're very susceptible. Your Dirty Dozen, you want to be buying organic ideally. And the Clean 15 is you can buy it conventionally, or
That's good to know. I never heard that before.
Yeah, so Google it, and you'll see what falls under that Dirty Dozen, and clean. And I could certainly include the link to it in the show notes.
Okay. Next one. How does nutrition affect your mental health? And can it even affect your mental health, actually?
Yeah, so the studies show that people with mental health conditions, whether it be anxiety, depression, or some other mental health disorder, are generally that general population of people that falls under that category. They've studied fairly large populations of these people and found that they are deficient in certain vitamins and minerals, and they have these conditions. So it's not as if, if you're deficient in this, yes, you'll have mental health issues. No, it's more a contributory factor as opposed to a direct causation. So I could say zinc, magnesium, vitamin D, omega-3, they're really important to your mental health. Having those vitamins and minerals and fats in your diet. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that, you could have high zinc or, good amounts of zinc and vitamin D, and you can still be depressed. So it just will lessen, the likelihood. But, anxiety and depression, the cycles that we all go through. It's just, if you're in a highly anxious state for a long period of time, or depressed for a long period of time, then that's probably considered not so normal. And yeah, so if you obviously eat well, you will feel better and lower the likelihood of, or certainly you'll increase your resilience, and be more resilient if you have a healthy diet to those mental health issues, or you could bounce back quicker, so to speak. So, yeah.
Okay. Next question. So, can you eat healthy without compromise?
Absolutely. So I consider healthy eating is a sustainable lifestyle. So it's not doing without, it's eating a wide variety of foods. So not excluding certain food groups, like, we mentioned gluten before. It's not, for people that are sensitive to gluten, absolutely, it's going to help them to avoid it. But if you're not, then why restrict yourself from that?
With carbs, I always hear like, oh, I got to cut carbs out of my diet. You know what I mean? So they can lose weight or something,
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Raul, is when that happens, people miss it. And so what they're doing is counting down the period of time that they're going to do without so that they can just get back into it. And and so it's
put up on it way more.
Absolutely. I find it time and time again with, people talking about no sugar. I'm going to totally eliminate sugar out of my diet, or no carbs, or no fats, or no alcohol. So they'll do that 1 month, dry July or whatever, and then they're just counting down off the calendar. They're looking forward to the 1st of August because they're going to hit it hard, like it's that. So what I consider healthy is having the things in your diet that you enjoy, but being able to self-regulate and enjoy them without overdoing it. So it's finding that nice balance between enjoying it but not overdoing it. So again, it's the overdoing, and I think the key point here is it's not too little. It's that Goldilocks principle, not too little, because you exclude anything, it's going to result in some nutritional deficiency. So you want, but not too much of it, because that again is not healthy either. You want to find that just right point, and that's a journey that you go on, because everyone's different. I'm wired completely different to you, so you'll have things that you love that I think, oh, yuck, and it's vice versa. Yeah.
So with that of compromise, I've also heard, skipping meals, like, oh, I need to skip lunch or skip dinner in order for me to help me lose weight. What are your thoughts on skipping meals?
Yeah. So the studies show that if you skip a meal and you eat the other meals well, so you've got a nice balanced meal in the other meals that you have. So just let's take, for example, skipping breakfast. It's a very common one that people skip. So provided your lunch is nourishing and it's got a good balance of the macros, and your dinner is the same, then overall you'll eat less calories. So if your goal is to lose weight, then it can be helpful towards that goal. In that intermittent fasting, or that time restricted feeding context that people generally do this for, it also helps the body repair and rejuvenate. So our gastrointestinal lining has a chance to repair. We get a chance to build up some enzymes ready for the next meal. And so not completely bombarding our system all the time, our digestive tract gets to do its repair work. So it is helpful to have some fasts and not to be constantly feeding. And the research shows that. Also, the research has shown that our powerhouse, our cellular powerhouse, which is the mitochondria, actually gets a bit of a renovation, and so that drives our cellular energy, which overall will drive our energy output. So if the cell can produce more energy because it's nicely renovated, and it's repaired well from having like a little fast during the day. And then that time period also varies, and the studies show variation around that fasting period as well. So again, it really comes down to the individual's goals, because this is really hard for an athlete to do, because an athlete's always chasing calories. Yeah. So harder for athletes, but if you're not, you're a sedentary worker and concerned that you're putting on weight, then this can be a helpful way of doing it.
And speaking of which, of diets and intermittent fasting, if someone was, wanted to start this new year off right, 2022, they want to hit it hard, New Year's resolution, lose weight, gain weight, would put on muscle, maintain, whatever the case may be. How do they know what diet is best for them?
That's a terrific question. And everyone's seeking that perfect diet that just resonates with them. And my question is, I guess, not black and white. Again, it depends on the individual, and depends on what your goals are around health and what you're striving for. And my personal belief and what I share with others is it's a journey that you go on yourself, and you find through trial and error what foods resonate with your body and what foods don't. And over the years, I've tried veganism, vegetarianism. I've done the blood type diet. So I did, a fair bit of dieting going through the years. But I found aspects that I really liked of each one. And what I've done is just combined it into my lifestyle. So I actually find that through the blood type diet, I was, categorized. I can't remember which one I am, but essentially someone that shouldn't eat much meat. So, again, it doesn't say you shouldn't eat it at all. It just says seldom. So it's on my seldom column, and then eat lots of vegetables and fish is, resonates well. And I tried that blood type diet, and that really resonated with my body. And so I've continued a version of that ongoing. So I don't avoid meat entirely. I certainly have more fish than what I do have meat, but I certainly eat my meat. So I'm not restricting anything entirely. I've just found that nice balance of having higher vegetable consumptions because it really resonates with me, less meat. But, there's people on this blood type diet that they're encouraged to eat lots of meat, right? So I don't... Look, and the science behind it is not there. So scientifically, it's not proven. It just happened to resonate with me. So I'm not vouching for it. I'm not, promoting it. I'm just sharing my story of this self-discovery. Yeah, and it worked for me. And it was just through trial and error. And so now I don't restrict in any category. Yes, I eat carbs. I eat fat. I eat enough protein. Lots of veggies, lots of fruit, and it just really works for me. And so that's how I work with my clients is I go through their food preferences, I go through their goals, and I'm tailoring it to them. So it's something that they can do for a lifetime, not for a period of time. It's, it's all about something for a lifetime.
Do you think people are generally they're healthier and happier when they don't restrict themselves from a certain, category of food or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at these blue zones, they're very happy people. So the blue zones are where a large portion of the populations lived greater than 100 years. So they've got lots of centenarians, and they've studied their lifestyle. And it's all about, it's the Goldilocks principle. So they eat wide variety of foods, very fresh, very whole. They'll eat together. They have a good community about them. They may have a faith associated with that community or some belief system, and they enjoy each other's company. They're very active people. And so they get adequate sleep, they work physically, but these are people that are still riding bikes in their hundreds. So they're not in a hospital getting drip fed and on life support or whatever. They're actually very active people, greater than 100 years, and they're very happy. They're so cheerful. So for me, it isn't about restriction. It is about going on this journey and finding out what resonates with you. And I'm constantly evolving this, I'm constantly changing, tweaking things. And so I've been on my journey for 45 years and I encourage everyone to go on their journey, but it's not restrictive behavior. Yes, I had to learn a bit, and obviously I did some restrictive dieting, but I didn't do it for long periods of time. And now I'm not an advocate for it. It's more an advocate for a good balance around their lifestyle, around what they eat.
Nice. That's good. That's good to know. So for people who are missing out on certain, vitamins because the way their diet is and how they eat, should they be taking a daily multivitamin?
Look, again, there's studies that, recommend that, or certainly the outcomes show that, it's positive for your health and it's certainly not detrimental for your health. I guess it comes down to a question of money. And so, yes, I certainly think, if parents are struggling to get their kids to eat well, then supplementing a multivitamin. But again, you don't want this dependence on it. So it's a period of time that you want to be on it. Again, you could be really deficient in a certain vitamin or mineral. So then it's important to I guess, get that back to where it should be. And a supplement can help do that. But long term, you want to be more reliant on getting it through your diet, as opposed to being reliant on pills, because pills can encourage that sort of unhealthy lifestyle and eating, because they just think, well, I can just take a pill to, pick myself up. And so I'm not like I support it if it's indicated and that person's deficient in it. And we need to get it back to normal levels quite quickly, because, their health is being compromised as a result of being deficient in it. But at the same time, it's helping them also find eat more of the foods that are going to bring that into their, bring that nutrition into their diet. So,
would you say the same goes for like a daily probiotic? If you're missing out on those natural bacteria, I guess that your GI system needs.
Yeah, so this is a really loaded question, so to speak, in a sense that I can't give you a straight answer, as much as I'd love to say. It's very dependent on the person. So certainly after periods of antibiotics, then it does help restore that healthy population that the GI best works with, because the antibiotics is like an atomic bomb. It kills all the bacteria, the good and the bad, which, in certain circumstances, it's absolutely needed, because you've got to get rid of that bad bacteria quickly. Otherwise, that person's going to be, really compromised. So, you drop the atomic bomb, but then, help get it back. And so a probiotic after antibiotics can be really helpful. But again, you want a multi-strain probiotic. So single strain, yes. So there's a lot of research around single strains that support this condition. And for that condition, like if it's IBS, then certain strains, or, for acne, there's certain strains that are really helpful for that condition. So have that strain specific probiotic. But if you've just dropped the atomic bomb, being the antibiotic, then you want a multi-strain probiotic. So again, it's not just taking any probiotic, it's getting the right probiotic for that person, for where they're at. And it's probably the same as supplementing with minerals and vitamins. You don't want to be doing it just because Joe Blow down the road's got big muscles and I want to be like him or her. Everyone's at different points in their health journey, and you want to do what's right for you. Otherwise, you could be wasting your money.
What are some natural ways that people can kind of take care of that?
Yeah, so we can support it through prebiotics, which is feeding our natural bacteria that reside in our stomach. And so again, we'll have that commensal bacteria that may be diminished after antibiotics, but we can help restore that population through eating the right foods that nourish or feed that probiotic. So the prebiotic is the food for the probiotic. And prebiotic food is typically highly fibrous food. So it's your fruit and vegetables and your grains. And again, this is why eliminating grains and carbohydrates is not great for our gut health, because this is what, most of the population within our gut thrive off is carbohydrates. But it's whole carbohydrates. It's not, sugar. It's not, so it's not eating simple carbohydrates or high GI foods. It's eating your low GI foods, your high wholesome foods like, your fruit and vegetables that are really going to, because the gut bacteria help break down that indigestible fiber. So it feeds off that and utilizes that. And what it doesn't need, we end up pooping out. But again, it is very helpful to eat lots of fruit and vegetables and grains and legumes.
One of the more interesting questions I got when conducting my research and talking to people around me was I found common, and it was something I really didn't think about, was a poor appetite. You always think of eating too much. What about people who don't eat enough and who just don't desire to eat more when they need it? What is your tips and advice for people with a poor appetite?
And this is quite common. I'm seeing it a lot in my clinic because of what we've been through with the COVID pandemic and the amount of stress and upheaval and change in people's lives. And that's constantly moving, right? We really don't get a chance to just to live without more change coming into our lives constantly. So it's, a bit unusual to have so much change in such a short period of time. And that's the stress on the body. And when we're in that fight or flight or that highly stressed state, our digestive system, which best works with the parasympathetic nervous system, allows the digestive system to function, that is basically not turned off completely, but it's down regulated. So what I suggest to people that don't have an appetite or just ain't hungry is really start to do things to allow your body to recuperate. So it's whatever relaxes you, the person, whether it be enjoying some time with my friends, socializing. It's, we've been missing a lot of that. It's going into nature and spending time in nature. It's going for a swim in the ocean. It's doing a bit of exercise will help. So it's really, but again, you don't want to be doing too much. You can overdo the exercise so that you not hungry either. So again, it's a bit of that Goldilocks principle, but mindfulness practices will really help switch on the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest state. So I always suggest people to take time out to eat. So away from distractions, away from stress such as work, and have it with someone. So you're having nice conversation, not talking about work or problems. You're just conversing and, sharing some laughs. And so laughing helps switch on that parasympathetic nervous system, being in nature, breathing. So it's doing the things that relax you and doing more of that, or finding a better balance of those relaxing activities. Because in our society, it's all about doing activity. Am I doing enough? This person's achieving all these things and ticking all these boxes. Oh, I'm nothing because I'm not doing all that. But it's the excess doing that is affecting our digestive system.
Another interesting question I got is something that I have always thought also is, eating healthy can be expensive. So how can people make the most of their dollar when going to the farmer's market or the grocery store to get their foods. Because I mean, sometimes these foods, especially if they're not local in your area, they can be pricey. So what are your tips for people shopping at the grocery store?
Yeah, so buying seasonal produce, so looking up what's seasonal, that's really important. And generally, you only see at the farmer's market what's in season. So it's probably better going to the farmer's market as opposed to your supermarket, which will import stuff from overseas. So it's not seasonal. So it's coming from another country. Therefore, it's going to cost more because of all the shipping and freight and handling. So certainly buying seasonal, and what you mentioned, buying local, so supporting local, so there's less shipping, handling costs associated with that produce. Also doing the Dirty Dozen Clean 15 will help. So you don't need to buy all organic, just buy what's in that Dirty Dozen list as organic, so that will help save some money. Buying less processed and more whole is going to help as well because, again, there's less handling involved. But also taking into consideration when you are eating whole foods, you're getting the macros, you're getting the nourishment the body needs, so it's going to want less of it. So, for example, you go to McDonald's, you can have this Happy Meal or some big meal, and an hour later, you're hungry again because the body hasn't got the nourishment it needs. It's just got heaps of sugar and heaps of fat. And it's exactly, and the body's saying, well, where's my protein? You haven't given me adequate amount of protein, or, I'm looking for some more nourishment. And so although it might be cheap to buy junk food, you need to buy a whole lot more of it in order to satisfy the body. But when you're buying whole foods, less processed foods, you will actually end up being satisfied with less than what you think you need. And so the other thing I recommend to people to do is actually get involved with the whole cooking process because the more time you spend with the food, it's providing again, the aromas, the smells, the digestive enzymes are being turned on. And if you eat it with people, you're going to eat slower. You're going to feel the satiation hormones to say that you're full. So they'll actually register. Whereas, when you scoff food down, the hormones don't even get to the brain to say, hey, you're full. And then you think I'm still hungry. So you keep eating. And then, so by eating slow, by preparing the meal yourself, it's going to help your health overall. It will help your budget because the slower you eat, you'll find you need less. And you can put aside what you didn't eat and have it later on. So, so I do recommend people slow down, eat local, eat seasonal, organic where possible, whole foods, that Dirty Dozen Clean 15. So that's, I guess, my recommendations to help your budget and still remain healthy.
Got it. That's great information, Anthony. Next question. This one is from a cousin of mine who likes to sip a little. Is it true that alcohol causes you to gain a beer belly and gain weight?
Yeah, again, it's back to that thing of direct causation or contributing factor. Certainly, a contributing factor. Directly cause weight gain will depend on the person and their lifestyle, what else they're eating, or how whether they're moving their body, whether they're sleeping. So there's so many other contributors to belly fat contribution. So that stress we talked about before, so this constantly doing and not resting and allowing the body to recover, that constantly highly anxious state of ticking boxes and running around silly, that is a stress state within the body, and it causes some dysregulation or things that will go out of balance within the body, and as a result, you have a hormonal imbalance, and that can create that sort of that belly fat as well, or be a contributing factor to that belly weight fat gain. In terms of alcohol itself, it's highly calorific, so the alcohol content. So regardless of how they market the product, whether they say low carb beer, and then typically they'll always say low carb this, and but it's the amount of alcohol within it. So if you're having
the more alcohol, the more calories.
Correct. So spirits has more calories than, say, beer. And if you're going to enjoy a drink, have low alcoholic beer. Don't worry about whether it says low carbs, because it's not about the carbs. It's the alcohol content is where the calories are. Yes, yeah. I mean, it's a drink at the end of the day. The carbs are in the alcohol. It's and part of the fermentation process is the yeast consuming the sugar. So it's actually consuming the carbohydrates, right? So the yeast is putting out carbon dioxide and alcohol, right, as part of their consumption process. And so it's the alcohol. So to put it into context, fat is like 9 calories per gram. So every gram of fat you consume is 9 calories. Every gram of alcohol you consume is 7 calories. So if people are concerned about fat, they should be equally concerned about the amount of alcohol they're drinking, not whether it says low carb.
That's good to know. That's a good way to think about it. With the over the past few years, I don't know if it was just me. I'm sure other people also have noticed that. I feel like bread has gotten a bad rap. It's like, oh, stay away from bread. It causes inflammation and also causes you to gain weight. Stick to whole wheat or whole grain as opposed to white. What are your overall thoughts on bread? Like, can people, if they're trying to lose weight, can they still consume bread, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so you're right. It depends on the that person's goals and what they're trying to achieve. So you mentioned weight loss. So it can be helpful to reduce your overall bread consumption, to reduce the calories in your diet. So it's all about that, achieving that calorie deficit. But you can also equally, consume bread and just exercise more, and that's going to create the calorie deficit. So it's not the bread itself that's evil. There's nothing evil about bread. And as I alluded to before, bread's really good for our microbiome, our gut bacteria. It's what it feeds off. And it prefers the whole forms, the ones with fiber. So the more whole the bread is, the more less processed, so to speak, the better it is for our microbiome. Better it is to give that satiation I mentioned. So the more fiber in your diet, the fuller you'll feel. So if you're eating white bread, so to speak, it will give less fullness and you'll still feel hungry and you'll eat more of it. And so the calories overall are going to be a bit higher eating white bread as opposed to whole grain or whole meal or seeded, or as close as what we can get it to being less processed. So it's not necessarily the bread itself, and it gets back to that person. If they have irritable bowel disease, or as I mentioned, any celiac disease or something like that, then absolutely that they need to be avoiding the gluten grains or anything that's going to inflame the bowel. However, if you don't have any of that and you want to lose weight, what I suggest is that you cut back on it, but you don't eliminate it. So you're still enjoying like a slice for breakfast, but that slice is wholemeal, it's sourdough. So sourdough is fermented bread, so it's easier to digest. And you're putting avocado, which is a healthy fat, and that's going to give more satiation. If you're just putting bread and honey, there's less satiation with that. So you're going to need another piece with some more honey. So what I suggest is that people have that bread, but have it with some more protein, some good fats, as I mentioned, avocado, some olive oil, have an egg with it, which is a nice protein, so you're still enjoying at least a slice a day or whatever, but you're cutting back on your 3 or 4 slices you're having. So you're helping yourself, but you're not doing without it, and your microbiome's still happy because it's getting some nourishment. So certainly bread's not evil, and even white bread. White bread's really helpful for the athlete because the athlete is chasing simple carbohydrates, things that the digestive system doesn't have to work hard for. So I recommend to my athletes to have white bread with honey as fuel during the race or pre-race, because it's easy to digest and it gives them the energy they need for the race. But again, it's different goals for different people. So it really comes down to the person. I think I've sort of spoken a lot about that, but I think
kind of like with everything you're saying, and with all the great insight you're providing, everything, it just kind of depends on everyone's goals and what they're trying to accomplish, because there's not really a standard of what people need to be eating.
Absolutely. So there's no one size fits all. And people are looking for this, or they hear about someone else doing the keto diet or the low carb diet, and they hear about the results and they think, well, I want the results, therefore I'm going to do the diet. But again, what are they going to do after they go on that diet and they get the results? What do you go back to? So this is why I've got problems with people going on diets, is because it's only for a short period. Then you go back to your old ways, then the weight comes back and you're back into this cycle. And yes, the weight loss industry make a fortune out of it. They want you to go on these diet and fads, just because then you'll keep coming back. But I actually don't want to support the weight loss industry. Personally, I want to find what works for you, set you up for a lifetime, and you're happy, healthy, and you're not yo-yoing. So that's, I really, the whole thing around dieting, don't do it. Just find a lifestyle that works for you and resonates with how you want to feel and enables the energy output that you desire. That's what I suggest. Absolutely. Yeah, totally. And I mentioned these blue zones before, that they do this lifestyle for a lifetime. It doesn't change. They have their morning rituals they do every day. They've got their work they do every day, their activity, they eat together. They just do it day after day. They sleep well every night, and they're happy. So again, you can find your version of that works for you.
And Anthony, if you were to recommend one thing people need to start today after listening to this episode from a nutritional standpoint, what would it be?
That's a good question. And it's a tough one to give a simple answer. Again, so sorry, it won't be, it's not going to be short. But for me, it is tackling that area that you're most struggling in. So it's making a small step in that area. So if you're not moving your body, but you could be eating quite well, and that's the area that you're finding that you think you need to improve the most, then making a small start. So I totally recommend making small bite-sized starts. So it enables you to get going. And once you get going, momentum builds because you start to feel better. And as you start to feel better, you want to start doing more and you want to be consistent with it. So I suggest you start with exercise, but start simple. Don't think you've got to run a half marathon, the day after starting your New Year's resolution. Start small and just build slowly. And as you said, it's a marathon and not a sprint. So it's just seeing, like, if you want to improve your sleep habits, and I know sleep has been compromised during this pandemic, is start with one area of sleep. So just be consistent to bed and a consistent wake time. Just start with that one area. Do that consistently for a period of time so it becomes habit, and then start tweaking another area. Don't try to change everything at once because it'll be overwhelming and you won't do anything. So it's the same as, I'm going to go I'm going to sign up to the gym. I'm going to start doing these high intensity interval sessions. You'll do your first class. You'll feel totally exhausted, terrible. You'll be sore the next day and you think, nah, not doing that again. And then you'll go back to your old ways and not get started. So I don't suggest any extremism. Start small, start simple, do it so it's attractive, and just be consistent with it. So if you want to do more mindfulness in 2022, then don't think you need to go straight to a 10-minute meditation or 10-minute breathing exercise. Start with 30 seconds or a minute, okay? And be consistent with that 30 seconds. and do it every day. And you think, oh, this is easy. I'm going to try a minute. And then you'll start doing a minute every day, and that will become part of your routine. Then you'll start thinking, oh, this is wonderful. I'm feeling relaxed after I do this 1 minute of breathing exercises or meditation, or I've got more energy post that. Then you think, oh, I'll give 2 minutes a go. And then eventually that just builds, and you keep doing it because you feel great as a result of doing it. So again, focus on that area that most needs addressing, and you'll know which that area could be, and it could be relationships, it could be any of these things that we've spoken about today. Start small, keep it simple, and be consistent.
So for the listeners, Anthony, how can they ask you further questions, get in contact with you, or post these questions so that they can be discussed on further podcasts?
Yeah, so listeners, please reach out to me via my website, which is me&my.wellness.com.au. So me&my wellness, all one word, .com.au. There's a contact section on the website, and there's phone number as well as email, and you can direct message me from the website. So that's probably the best way to make that initial contact, or on any of the social platforms. So if you like Facebook, it's at me&my.wellness.com.au. So it's the same as my website for my social tag for Facebook. And for Instagram, it's at me&my wellness. And TikTok, which I'm new to, it's at me&my wellness. So anyway, I'm sure you'll find me on one of those platforms, and we can message, and I can take your questions or help you out in any way you'd like me to.
Awesome. Well, thank you for all your inspiration, your insight about nutrition for people and myself. I learned a lot heading into 2022. So thank you, Anthony Hartcher, and thank you to the listeners listening to this episode. If you want more information, please visit me&my Health Hub. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raul. Really appreciate it. And you did amazing. I think you should take the raids more often.